Hi, today I'm going to replace the brake pads and rotors on the front two tires of a Hyundai Sonata. That's a 2003. It's a fairly easy project, and one thing I recommend that you just, whenever you do the brakes and pads, just brake pads, just do the rotors too, because you know the shops and everything will try to save money by grinding down the rotors and everything, but it's not worth it because I just bought the rotors and the brake pads for the front for only 50 bucks on eBay, and it's just not worth all the effort to grind down the rotors anymore because the rotors are so cheap to buy. Okay, so first I've got my jack there. These jacks are pretty cheap. You can use just what came with the car, but these make it a lot easier to pump it up. So first I'll use this tool that came with the car and just pop that cap off. So now you can see your 3 or 4 hub or nuts, lug nuts, sorry. And by the way, the 2003 was a year that they just switched, so they went from, some of them have 5, some of them have 4 lugs. You got to make sure when you buy your rotors on eBay that you get the right ones. They changed them like 3 times within a couple years. Okay, so now I'm just using this tool that again came with the car, and I'm loosening those. I actually have a breaker bar too. Sometimes these are on so tight you got to get a little more torque on them. Like this one's pretty hard. So I'll get those all off. Forgot to mention that I just get those kind of loose, those lug nuts, and then I start jacking it up. You obviously don't want to unscrew them all the way until you've got your car jacked up. So as you can see, this is pretty easy to jack up my car. This thing, I mean, I'm just doing it with one arm while I'm videoing. And it's going pretty well. So I'll unscrew those nuts and then pull the wheel off. Okay, I've got the wheel off. I took the 4 lugs off and then we've got the wheel off. This is your rotor that you're going to replace. This is the caliper, and that's what like squeezes the brake pad against the rotor and stops your car. And then here's the brake pad. Usually the front brake pads are a little bit bigger and the rear ones are smaller, so just watch for that. They're usually different sizes, so you got to make sure you get front and rear, or like distinguish them. Also, I usually put the wheel just under the car right there, so in case sometimes these things kind of lower over time or get kicked out, and you know, so it's a little bit safer if you have your wheel under there and you're working under there. The other thing is, I didn't show you, this is the rotor I bought on eBay again. With shipping and everything, it was 15 or 50 bucks for the rotors and ceramic pads for the front. So these are the ceramic pads, like this. So we'll put those on. Okay, so basically you're gonna be taking this nut off, and then there's another one down on the bottom of the caliper, down about there. And I just squirt it with some WD-40 to try to loosen it up. You got to get quite a bit of torque on these things, so if you have a breaker bar or something a little longer, a long wrench, that's nice. Pull that off. Okay, I got those out. I actually ended up using, this is a 14 millimeter wrench, and they were actually pretty, or socket, sorry. They're actually pretty easy to get out in my case, but you know, they can be rusted in there if it's been a long time since you got a brake job. Or and then you just start kind of working this caliper off. I have to do it with 2 hands, but you can see there that the brake pad's there with a lot of pressure there, so it takes some effort to pull that off. Okay, so you can see there I got the caliper off, and it's down there in the background. I actually learned this trick. You use a hanger and just bend it a little bit, and you can hang the caliper up there. The reason you do that is because these little cables, they're, you know, pressurized. They've got this oil stuff in there that's making your brake pad work, and if the caliper's pretty heavy, and if it's weighing it down, you run the risk of, you know, breaking those, or you know, messing up those lines, the brake lines. So it's a good idea to have it hanging there and just keeping it out of your way. Also, you notice there's this cylinder in there. We're gonna eventually, when we put this back on, we're gonna have to compress that back down to get it over the new brake pads, because you know it squeezes pretty tight on your brake pads. So here I'm gonna pull these off, and you can see that I'll work those off, get the brake pads off. So there they are. Okay, I finally loosened these enough to get them to move. So I actually had to use one of my jacks to just kind of torque it. I pushed this end up of my wrench with the jack, and that was enough to break it. So that worked. You can use a breaker bar. You can like do what I did, like use a jack to help push the wrench upward. Okay, once I got that screw off, this other piece of the caliper came off, and then I could just kind of shimmy this thing off, and that's my old rotor. There, that came right off. Okay, I got my new rotor on there. Looks a lot nicer than that old rusty one. Now I'm just going to do all the steps basically in reverse order. So we'll screw the caliper stuff back on, and then put the brake pads on, and then this other piece of the caliper. Okay, this is how we're looking. So we have our rotor that I've put on, and then I ended up actually having to get a new caliper bracket here because the one I had was wrong for my car. Somehow some mechanic put the wrong one in at one point, so that's why my brake pad wasn't working out. So I got the right caliper bracket, and now I've put the brake pads here, here, and here on the front and back. And now I'm going to compress this caliper with some C-clamps. You can also rent these things at like an AutoZone or car place like that to compress that. You basically need that cylinder to go down a little bit so it'll fit over the new brake pads. But I just use C-clamps, and that seems to work fine. Okay, so I've got my C-clamp, and you see it, I've cranked it down so much that that cylinder is about flush with the edge of the caliper. That's about how you want it. Basically, I'm going to take off the C-clamp and really quickly put the caliper over the brake pads. Okay, I've now got the caliper on there, screwed on. It's looking good. I just need to get my wheel back on, get the lug nuts on, and should be good to go. Then I'll just do the other side. Okay, so now I've got that on there. As you can see, I've got the rotor and everything in place. So now, come over here on this other side, I'm working on this side. It's going well, but it's all pretty much the same process on this side. So I got the brake pads on both sides and rotors, and even that bracket for the caliper all set on. It's good to go. One thing to keep in mind is when I started backing this out, I forgot I hadn't pumped the brakes. So I started going toward my neighbor's backyard like super fast. I almost hit their garage, but I just started pumping it really fast, and they eventually started working, but it was super scary. Anyway, learn from my lesson. Make sure when you get in your car the first time after doing this that you keep it in park, and then just pump the brakes until you can still feel them kind of firm up, and then put it into gear. So anyway, hope this helped, and leave comments if you need, and shoot me questions, and thanks for watching. See ya.